You will live this same life forever. Not metaphorically, not as a thought experiment to motivate better choices. Friedrich Nietzsche proposed something darker than any philosopher before him had been willing to consider, that the entire content of your existence repeats eternally, identically, infinitely, with no variation and no escape. Every decision you have made, every word you have spoken, every cowardice you have rationalized, every small surrender you executed when no one was watching, every relationship you settled into out of fear of being alone, every dream you abandoned because the work felt too heavy, all of it returns exactly as it occurred, forever. The argument that follows explains everything you have been pretending not to see. Nietzsche called this eternal return, and he did not propose it as a comforting cosmic theory. He proposed it as the most brutal psychological test ever devised. The question he was actually asking was not whether the universe repeats. The question was whether your life is one you would consent to live again, exactly as it has unfolded, and what your honest answer reveals about the man you have become. Examine your honest answer carefully. Most men have never asked themselves this question, because most men cannot afford to. The truth that surfaces when you sit with it is the truth that your life is not something you have been authoring. It is something you have been enduring. And the difference between those two positions is the difference between a man who exists and a man who is merely waiting for existence to end. Nietzsche identified this pattern with surgical precision. He saw that the modern man has constructed an entire psychological architecture designed to avoid this confrontation. The endless distractions, the constant scrolling, the chronic busyness, the substances, the performances, the carefully curated identity that exists only to deflect the fundamental question of whether this life, this specific life, exactly as you have lived it, is one you would choose again. You would not. And you know you would not. But you have built your entire psychological framework around never having to admit it. Look at what your honest answer would expose. The decade you spent in a career you privately despised because it was safer than the work you actually wanted to do. The relationships you stayed in long after they had hollowed you out, because leaving meant facing yourself in the silence. The conversations you avoided that would have mattered most. The risks you refused because comfort felt more important than the man comfort was preventing you from becoming. If eternal return is true, if you must live this exact life infinitely, then every minute you spent inside the wrong career repeats forever. Every evening you wasted scrolling through other people's curated existences repeats forever. Every moment of silence you filled with distraction repeats forever. Every confrontation you avoided repeats forever. Every version of yourself you refused to become repeats forever, as the man who refused. That is the weight Nietzsche was actually proposing. Not a metaphysical theory, a psychological mirror that most men cannot survive looking into directly. Marcus Aurelius approached this from a different angle, but reached the same destination. He understood that the man who lives as though his life will end tomorrow is the man who lives most fully. But Nietzsche pushed harder. The man who lives as though his life will repeat forever is the man who is forced to either become coherent or to acknowledge that he has been wasting an existence that is not, in any meaningful sense, recoverable. You have been wasting it. That is not an accusation. It is an observation that most men would make about themselves if they were honest for 30 consecutive seconds. The mechanism operating in your life right now is not difficult to identify. You have organized your existence around the avoidance of consequence. Every choice has been filtered through the question of what is easiest, what is safest, what is least likely to require you to discover something uncomfortable about yourself. And the cumulative effect of those filtered choices is the man you have become. A man whose life would not survive the eternal return test for 30 seconds. Schopenhauer saw this dynamic with even greater pessimism. He understood that most human existence is essentially mechanical, a series of impulses, reactions, and gratifications strung together without any underlying coherence. The man who lives this kind of existence cannot consent to eternal return because there is no man there to consent. There is only a process, a pattern, a biological machine running through its routines until it stops running. Most men are this kind of existence, not because they were destined to be, because they have refused to do the work that would have made them into something else. What surfaces when you sit with eternal return is the recognition that the choice between being a process and being a man is being made every single day, in every single decision, in every single moment of authentic confrontation that you either accept or evade. Most men evade. They evade so consistently that by the time they reach middle age, the evasion has become indistinguishable from the personality. They are not avoiding their lives anymore. They have become the avoidance itself. You know this man. You have spent years becoming him. There is a particular cruelty in what Nietzsche was actually proposing. He was not asking whether you would choose this life. He was asking whether you have lived in such a way that the question is even coherent. Because the man who has never made a choice cannot meaningfully be asked whether he would make the same choices again. He has not made choices. He has reacted to circumstances. He has drifted. He has accumulated. He has compiled experiences into something that resembles a life from the outside while remaining hollow at the center. The hollow at the center is what eternal return illuminates. The thought experiment is not really about repetition. It is about whether there is any one home inside, the life being repeated. Examine the question carefully. If your life repeats exactly as it has been lived, what specifically returns? The job, the relationships, the habits, the recurring thoughts? Yes. But what about the man inside all of that? Is there a coherent self that returns with the experiences? Or is there only a sequence of reactions that has worn the appearance of a self? Most men cannot answer this question because answering it would require them to acknowledge that the self they have been claiming as theirs is largely a fiction, maintained through the absence of pressure to verify it. Nietzsche knew this. He was not trying to comfort you. He was trying to expose you. The eternal return is the mechanism by which a man either discovers that he has been alive or discovers that he has been performing the appearance of life while avoiding the substance of it. You have been performing. The performance has been so consistent that you have started to mistake it for character. The phrases you repeat, the opinions you have curated, the version of yourself you present in different rooms, the values you claim to hold while making decisions that contradict them, the man you describe yourself as when someone asks. None of it has been tested against the question of whether you would consent to live it forever. None of it has been forced to defend itself against the possibility of infinite recurrence. If it were tested, it would collapse. You would not consent. You would beg for the cycle to be broken. You would offer anything to be released from the eternal repetition of the man you have settled into being. That recognition is the entire point of eternal return as a psychological instrument. Nietzsche was not predicting metaphysics. He was diagnosing souls. And the diagnosis for most modern men is that they have been living in such a way that infinite repetition is the most horrifying possibility imaginable. Not because life is hard, but because they have not been living lives worth repeating. Sit with that for 30 seconds before continuing. The men who survive the eternal return question are not men who have lived easy lives. They are men who have lived authentic lives. Men who have suffered the suffering that was theirs to suffer. Men who have refused to outsource their decisions to convenience. Men who have built something, not necessarily something visible, but something real inside themselves that they would consent to live alongside forever. You have not built that. You have built something else. You have built a structure designed to avoid the moments that would have required you to build the real thing. And the structure is now your life, and the life is now the man. And the man is now what would repeat forever if Nietzsche's thought experiment turned out to be literal. There is a way out of this, but Nietzsche refused to provide it as a formula. He understood that any formula would become another avoidance mechanism, another distraction, another performance of work without the actual work being done. The way out is not a way. It is a recognition. The recognition that the man who can consent to eternal return is the man who has stopped negotiating with his own existence and started living it directly. Most men will never make this recognition. They will continue performing. They will continue avoiding. They will continue mistaking the absence of catastrophe for the presence of meaning. And one day, much sooner than they expect, the life they have not been living will end, and there will be nothing to repeat eternally except the long, uninterrupted sequence of moments they spent waiting for their actual life to begin. That is the verdict Nietzsche was delivering. Not a doctrine about the structure of the universe, a diagnosis about the structure of you. The question is not whether the universe will repeat your life infinitely. The question is whether the life you are currently living is one a man would consent to live even once. You will live this same life forever.